Today, in Chapter 39 of Brihad Parashara Hora Shastra, we will discuss topics such as Panchagraha Yoga, Sannyasa, and Chakravarti Raja Yoga. For those of you who really study the intricate mathematics of destiny, this chapter, it's an absolute pinnacle of astrological architecture. We're looking at conditions that are so incredibly precise and outcomes that are so extreme that they literally redefine a person's entire life trajectory. We are going to specifically analyze the profound mechanics of 5-planet conjunctions. We'll see how the exact same concentration of cosmic energy can create a supreme ruler of the material world, or someone who entirely abandons it. Diving directly into the text, looking at the original Sanskrit layout for Chapter 39, which outlines the Raja Yogas, Parashar states that these are alignments that make one entitled to royal honors. But what we're focusing on today goes way beyond your standard royal combinations. We're venturing into the territory of extreme planetary density. You see, when multiple planets occupy a single space in the sky, their energies don't just gently mix together, they fuse, they clash, and they synthesize into an entirely new, overpowering force. So what exactly is a Panchagraha Yoga? Well, it happens when exactly 5 planets can join in a single house or sign. I want you to imagine 5 highly distinct, incredibly powerful individuals all locked in a single room. The resulting dynamic is either going to be incredibly productive or deeply destructive. Astrologically speaking, this massive concentration acts like a giant gravitational well in the birth chart. All of the natives' life focus, all their karma, and all their energy get pulled right into the themes of that one specific house. To truly understand how this works, we need to examine the specific 5-planet conjunctions detailed in verses 7 and 8. We'll begin our exegesis with verse 7, which basically establishes the foundation for the ultimate material yoga. Now, in the classical tradition, a yoga is a specific union, almost like a mathematical equation. Verse 7 outlines an equation of planetary energies that produces an individual whose worldly influence is virtually limitless. But to understand why this verse promises such immense, untouchable power, we have to look closely at exactly who is sitting at this cosmic table. Breaking down this combination, we've got the Sun, the Moon, Mars, Mercury, and, crucially, Jupiter. Notice how perfectly this maps onto a highly functioning government? In Parashari astrology, the Sun is the king, representing the soul and absolute authority. The Moon is the royal consort, handling the mind and public relations. Mars, that's the commander of the army, providing execution and raw courage. Mercury acts as the crown prince, bringing intellect and communication to the table. And finally, you have Jupiter, the wise minister, providing ethics, expansion, and divine grace. It is a flawless synthesis of royal, martial, communicative, and wisdom energies, all working in absolute unison. The simple English translation of this verse reveals something incredible. This specific blend guarantees supreme worldly success and unassailable authority. The text uses the Sanskrit term Chakravarti. Historically speaking, a Chakravarti is an emperor whose chariot wheels, the chakra, can roll across all kingdoms without ever meeting a single obstruction. It signifies a ruler whose dominion is absolute and universally recognized. Because this 5-planet group doesn't contain any inherently destructive friction, it's all active, expansive, and intellectual forces, the native's life path is effectively cleared of insurmountable obstacles. Let's dig into the deeper meanings here. Astrologically, this yoga requires supreme strength, usually manifesting best in the foundational kendra or the highly auspicious trikona houses. Philosophically, it represents a complete, perfect alignment of the self. Think about it. Your soul's desire, your mind's emotional capacity, your physical drive, and your intellectual processing are all being guided by Jupiter's higher wisdom. Now, in practical modern terms, we're not usually talking about literal chariot-driving kings anymore, right? Today, this vividly illustrates the chart of a global industry titan, a transformative world leader, or a visionary head of state. It's someone who builds a vast empire that fundamentally shapes society. Now, when placing this 5-planet conjunction within the traditional bhavas, or houses, the structural balance is absolutely vital. If this Chakravarti yoga occurs in the 1st house, the Tanu, or body, the person themselves becomes a living icon. If it falls in the 10th house of karma, their career and public deeds become legendary. But I want you to watch what happens to this structural balance when we alter just one single planet in this highly delicate ecosystem. And that brings us to verse 8. The original Sanskrit text here completely shifts the trajectory of the native's life. It takes that exact same intense concentration of 5 planets, but it introduces a totally different chemical element into the mix. And the result? A drastically different physical and spiritual outcome. Parsing this new combination from verse 8, we still have the moon, Mars, the sun, and Mercury, but notice the glaring difference here. Jupiter is completely gone. Jupiter's expansive, protective wisdom has been replaced by Saturn, Shani. In the planetary cabinet, Saturn is the servant. Saturn represents delay, restriction, harsh reality, old age, disease, and ultimately, detachment. Saturn is the natural enemy of the royal sun and the emotional moon. By making this swap, you have introduced a dark, heavy, incredibly restrictive gravity into an otherwise bright and active combination. The English translation of verse 8 is pretty stark, honestly. It warns that this specific combination leads either to physical vulnerability resulting in a short life, or total spiritual renunciation, the path of a sannyasi. You might wonder why such extremes. It's because the friction is just immense. Saturn is actively suppressing the vitality of the sun and the life force of the moon, all while Mars is wildly agitating the entire configuration. Often, the physical body simply cannot sustain this extreme energetic pressure, which can lead to early mortality. However, if the chart has other protective factors that allow the person to live, that same crushing pressure turns inward, and it crushes the ego entirely. This brilliantly illustrates the true philosophical meaning of sannyasa. It is the absolute shedding of the ego and complete detachment from material illusion. Saturn forces the native to see that power, wealth, and status are temporary and ultimately meaningless. In practical modern terms, this doesn't just mean a literal ascetic wandering the forest. It represents a modern monk, a deeply devoted philanthropist, or perhaps someone who builds immense, unimaginable wealth, only to experience a profound spiritual awakening, giving every single penny away to charity and choosing to live a life of absolute simplicity. So the crucial takeaway is this comparison. By swapping a single planet, just trading Jupiter for Saturn, the entire cosmic destiny flips. It goes from absolute worldly domination to absolute material renunciation. Jupiter provides the optimism, the sheer luck, and the social integration required to rule the world. Saturn, on the other hand, provides the pessimism, the isolation, and the harsh truth required to transcend the world entirely. It's honestly one of the most elegant and profound dualities presented in the entirety of the Brihad-Parashara Horashastra. All right, let's move on to the methodology and see how this builds in actual practice. How do we calculate if these yogas are truly active in someone's chart? Phase 1 requires serious precision. First, you erect the natal chart and identify the lagna. Next, you locate the specific bhava containing the 5 planets. But step 3 is where so many novice astrologers fail. You have to assess the exact degrees. Just because 5 planets are sitting in the same sign does not mean they are fully fused. If the sun is at 1 degree and Saturn is all the way at 29 degrees, the conjunction is way too loose. For these massive Parashara yogas to work as defined, the planets must be tightly bound by degree, actively participating in a localized cosmic event. Next, we must evaluate planetary dignity. Using the vital tables from the source text, we look at the exact degrees of Ucha and Nicha, exaltation and debilitation, to find the underlying strength. For example, the sun is exalted at exactly 10 degrees of Aries. Now, if our 5-planet Chakravarti yoga from verse 7 occurs in a sign where the king, the sun, is debilitated, well, the entire empire collapses before it's even built. The condition of the planets dictates whether the yoga yields its absolute highest fruit or just rots on the vine. Which leads us directly into phase 2 of the calculation. We systematically check for planets in their own signs or exalted states. We also have to verify if any planet is Vargotama, meaning it occupies the exact same sign in both the main birth chart and the crucial D9 Navamsa chart. A Vargotama planet is practically unshakable. Finally, we evaluate these 5 planets' relationship with the Atmakarga, which is the planet with the highest degree representing the soul's deepest desire. If the Atmakarga is intimately involved in that sannyasa yoga, the drive for renunciation isn't a passing phase. It comes from the very core of the person's being. And finally, everything culminates in Shadbala validation. Shadbala is the grueling mathematical calculation of the 6-fold strength of the planets. It incorporates positional, directional, and temporal strengths. You might see a beautiful Chakravarti yoga in a chart, but if the Shadbala calculation reveals that Jupiter and the Sun are mathematically starving for energy, the native might only become a manager at a local bank rather than a global emperor. Shadbala provides the raw numerical proof of whether the promised destiny detailed in Chapter 39 actually has the horsepower to manifest in physical reality. The precision detailed in Chapter 39 of Brihad Parashara Horashastra is just staggering. It shows us that the line between ruling the world and abandoning it entirely is razor thin, governed by the strict mathematical realities of our solar system. So, I'll leave you with this to ponder. If swapping just a single planetary degree can transform a world emperor into a wandering monk, what unseen cosmic mathematics are quietly writing the script of your destiny today?